Recording. Okay, now go ahead.
Got it. Okay. Lauren.
Perfect. Oh, and the other thing is, do you want people to find you on Instagram and follow you? And do you want
Sure.
to? Okay,
Yeah, well, I have a public page as well. So yeah, on that one.
so at the end, just finish it up with like, if you want to follow me, and throw in plug your public page and plug your
Okay.
Instagram so that other people can find you. Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome. No, thank you. I'm going to mute myself, and it's all you. Identify however you want.
Okay. Well, hi. My name is Lauren and I am an addict. Most of my life I have struggled with a lot of self-worth and self-love issues. You know, growing up, my parents worked very hard and they made everything look nice from the outside. You know, we had the house, the cars, the dog. But I always say, you know, in those four walls, we were just five strangers. I grew up in a somewhat chaotic environment. Although everything looked nice, my parents were living paycheck to paycheck. So they were very, you know, reactive, and they were always arguing about money. So I think from a very early age, I was very hyper vigilant. I can anticipate everyone's moves. I didn't move unless I knew it was safe to move. I, you know, watched everybody's emotions. Was it okay to say this? Was it okay to do that? So those are some traits that I gained early on. I also have a skin condition, so I was bullied a lot in school. I guess one of the main themes growing up was I never really felt safe. So I was kind of always looking for that safe place, and then always looking for love in the wrong places, really. It was always this elusive affection or this elusive love that I could never really obtain. Growing up, it was just always so I was always trying to fit in. I never really fit in anywhere, so I didn't really have a place to call my own, I guess you can say. So that's pretty much how my childhood went, just always being the outcast. And once I got to high school, I was very fortunate to have a car, and I started hanging out with these older kids who didn't have a car. So I fit perfectly within that little group. And I found my little clique, right? They loved me. I was convenient for them, but I finally felt like I had a place to belong. So needless to say, it wasn't the greatest group of friends. You know, we started skipping school a lot. Um, I guess you can say I am somewhat of a late bloomer. I took my first drink at 14, and I started doing drugs at 16. So my drug of choice is meth. I did smoke it in glass, and I started that at 16 years old. And again, always just looking for love in the wrong places, and that acceptance, and that feeling of belonging, and just really wanting to feel worthy of love. Along with meth use, landed me in a very toxic situationship, rather. And so that just led down to a whole slew of problems. You know, my drug use got a lot more intense. We were using every day. Um, I I always tried to maintain somewhat of a normal life in the day. I went to school and I was working, but by night, you know, I was um, committing little petty crimes, and being acting like little Bonnie and Clyde, and getting high. So that quickly, you know, escalated. And before I knew it, in high school, I wasn't going to graduate. and then I ended up pregnant. And I refused to become another teen statistic. So I got, my shit together, and luckily the situationship that I was in, the minute I said I'm pregnant, he kind of ran off. So he was that allowed me to kind of focus on myself, because he was really one of my big addictions as well. Being addicted to love is definitely a thing. And so I was able to stay clean for about a year, and I walked the stage 6 months pregnant. But my sickness, my addiction was pretty strong, and I told myself, after having the baby, um I'll just use a little while just to lose some weight, just to get the baby weight off, and then I can go back to normal. But like, as you hear in many of our stories, addiction is a very progressive disease, and when you start back up, you start right back where you left off. So that's kind of where I started up again at 18, and it just went downhill from there. I think when I finally, hit my rock bottom, um, it was once my life started to deteriorate. I started to, lose everything one by one. And, the craziness of the addiction, I'll bring up a story really quick that I could remember, is I used to work at a college, and I used to work in like one of those testing centers. So I would administer the tests for like placement. And just having to like take breaks to go get high really fast, just to be able to finish my day, or be able to stress out. I would make up some crazy excuse that I would have to leave early, and just slowly abandoning all my responsibilities, and really just kind of losing the life that I had worked so hard to build. um One thing I can say, and I'll bring this up because it has to do with how I got sober, is one thing I could really say is that my son was one of the he was my rock during my addiction. He was something that I was always able to kind of keep from really falling completely under. So if it ever came down to, his best interest, or my addiction and my drug use, I would always choose him. So things again only got worse, and I ended up homeless. Not because of my drug addiction, ironically, but my parents kind of started to really struggle financially, and they ended up losing their house. And when I saw this, I kind of knew that I had to get my life together on a fast track. So I stopped going to regular college, and I enrolled into like a trade school to try to fast track my way into a career. But unfortunately, I didn't beat the time frame that was set forth when my parents were going through foreclosures. So when they lost the house, uh, we were homeless. So me and my son, we were living in my car while I was finishing out my time in the trade school. And throughout this whole time, my addiction kind of took a little bit of a backseat, because I was really just trying to figure out how to survive. One thing I am a little grateful for, when I did run the streets a little bit, in my previous years, was that I learned a lot of survival skills. So that really came in handy when it was just me and my son living in my car on the street. And just simple things like learning like where to park in a well-lit area, or to move the car every 2 hours, because I didn't want to fall asleep and someone catch us and want to try to break in. I was not even 20, maybe 21 at the time, so I'm a young female with a really young child in the car. So I would set my alarm like every 2 hours in the night to try to move to a new parking spot, just so no one would kind of catch on to that routine. And just certain things like that. I'm not gonna lie, I did get high. During that time, I would hit up a lot of my so-called friends at the time and say, hey, I'll smoke you out if you give us a place to stay for the night, or, you know, can I shower my son at your house for a little bit? Things like that. So I was still using. I couldn't quite completely kick the habit. And then, you know, baby daddy is in and out of my story through this whole time. And he's in and out of jail. And he happens to get out, and he's driving my car around, and he ends up getting it impounded. So then I am on the street, homeless, without a car. And at this point, I'm feeling so defeated. You know, everything is just slowly, well, actually, at this point, it's not slow anymore. I'm losing everything like back to back to back. And I really don't know what to do anymore. But it wasn't until, believe it or not, none of that stopped me from using until DCFS actually got involved. And again, it wasn't due to my drug use. It was actually due to an incident that happened. But DCFS ended up getting involved, and they ended up taking custody of my son. And once that happened, I also found out that I was pregnant from the time that baby daddy did come around. So now I am on the street with no car, and I'm pregnant, and fighting a DCFS case for custody of my son. I think that's, you know, like I said, my son was my main rock. So once that incident really happened, it really broke me. That was definitely my rock bottom moment. And I remember looking up and saying, okay, God, I'm done. I'm not going to try to do it my way anymore. Just tell me what to do, where to go from here. And ironically, it led me to the rooms of AA. And I also had to do a program to get my son back. So that helped a lot. And then slowly, you know, with getting a sponsor and working the steps, and just kind of doing, you know, working a spiritual program, really working on myself and getting back into who I really am inside, and not chasing all these elusive self-sabotaging behaviors. I really found, you know, my way back to life. And from there, you know, I got my son back. As it's almost ironic, as quickly as I lost everything, once I got clean, it's like, you know, that fog lifts up and you can see everything so much clearer. And as quickly as I lost everything, things started to fall back into place, you know. So half of my time in program, I was still homeless, and I hid it from everyone, you know, in group and from the counselors, and I was drug testing until one time I almost fainted in group, and they're like, what is wrong with you? You don't really look well, but you're testing clean, you're pregnant, like what's going on? You know, like what, something does not make sense here. And I'm like, well, yeah, I haven't really slept or eaten in days, and I'm 6 months pregnant, still on the street. And they're like, what? Why haven't you said anything? And they got me into a sober living for women and children. So I finally had a place to stay. And shortly after, I got custody of my son back. I had my daughter, and I just never really looked back from there. I just kept going. I still work my spiritual program to this day. By the grace of God, I'll have 10 years in March. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, it wouldn't be possible without a spiritual program to keep me in check, because one of the things that is really a theme throughout my story is not feeling worthy, you know, never really feeling worthy of love, always chasing acceptance. And the main thing that recovery in particular gave me is self-love, and learning to really love myself, and know that I'm worthy, just because I'm here. And that's something that I do work on to this day, or this is something I continue to ask myself every day. So how I live day by day is, what would someone who loves themselves do in this moment or in this situation? That is a question I literally ask myself all the time. Because it's something that really does help me operate in uh, a higher self vibration, I guess you can say, because I'm an addict in every sense of the word. I will still self-sabotage to this day. Um, I love to be consumed in anything that feels good. So I definitely have to keep myself in check and make sure that I'm working my program on a daily basis. And I know that I think I'm kind of short, but I think that's pretty much all I have. Yeah, so if you want to follow me on Instagram, my handle is at 4queen_mentality. You can make sure to check my page out. I definitely promote a lot of self-growth and self-love on that page, as well as my story. Please feel free to reach out if you need anything. I'm always available, and I always reply and respond to all those messages. So go ahead and feel free to reach out to me on there.